Well, a friend of mine was a commercial interior designer, and they had the project to design the interior of Pascal's first large. I mean, they were the beginnings of box stores, essentially, and this was in Pointe Claire, Quebec. And of course, when they opened the doors, they folded them up, and they wanted a screen cover the front, all of the doors. And they gave me an area to work in, and so just design a screen for us. Well, I went and saw the store, and it was a wonderful store. You could buy anything in it, from punch press to a wine corker or whatever. Anyway, so I went back, and I was working in an old blacksmith shop that had a fantastic old scrap heap with all kinds of things that were handmade and parts of old cars and etc. So I essentially took that scrap pile and I made it into like a crazy machine mural, all different things relating to various things, and so it was a wonderful creative process to make this whole mural, and it became very popular because everybody would stop and look at and gaze at all of these things, some of them handmade, some of them production made, and it became the logo for their store. They asked me to, every store they built from then on, I would do a mural for the front of their store. It became my bread and butter for a number of years, but for me, it was a great study in industrial design, because for every mural I would do, I would probably have to buy 3 or 4 times as much material as needed, so I could have the right palette to work from. And so I would build a large, I would either rent a space or in my shop if it was a smaller one, and I would spread all that material all out, and I would have it all cleaned, and then I could pick pieces here and there and put all these fun things together. And each piece you would look at it and say, well, what is that for? And where did it come from? And what was the design meant to be? And it would be like archaeology almost, you know. And so I learned a vast amount about industrial design from looking at these things, mostly from the Iron Age, the way they would had to cast wheels with curves in the spokes so they wouldn't break when they were shrinking and things like that, you know. Cadillac wrench was done before auto hinge, and Cadillac wrench was part of the inspiration for auto hinge. Auto hinge was done in summer of 1986. This Cadillac wrench was done that. Actually, I had a letter from. I did my lunar lander in 1970. And I sent a picture of it to, I forget the name of the guy that did Ant Farm, yeah, and he sent me a wonderful letter back. Yeah, auto hinge, I thought about it, and it came from an ad agency was asking me to make something that looked like Stonehenge, and I thought about Cadillac wrench, and I said, geez, I'll make it out of crushed cars. That would be really fun. Yeah, it was used in a commercial. It's a yin and yang. They're both favorite. Wood fulfills a certain softness and need, and touch also needs structure that you can use that you can't use with wood. So the two of them are compatible as far as I'm concerned. I like the combinations of the two, one isn't favored over the other. I don't think. It's like saying which of your sons is the best. You know. I was just in my late teenage years. I went to England to because I was fascinated with wood carving, and I know there was a lot of commercial classic wood carvers, and my grandfather had been an amateur wood carver, and when he died, his tools were all sitting in a box at my cousin's place, and nobody needed them. So I went and retrieved those, and I was given those tools. And then I thought, well, I don't even know how to sharpen them. And there was a wood carver that lived close to a relative of mine. So while I was staying with him, I would go to his shop and he would be carving doors for churches and various things, and I got to be friends with him, and he taught me about how to sharpen them and various things, and I would help him do little jobs around the shop. So it wasn't very long. I probably spent a week in his shop, but I learned a vast amount in that 1 week because he was a doing guy, and he had all the classic things, how to sharpen and do that, and so that was the beginnings of my wood carving.
I see.
The thing is, we were living in a house that we bought on this property that's just down close by here, and it was so difficult to heat. And this is because we were high on a hill and we have the view. We bought the place for the view, but we didn't realize that there's always be the wind. And that house was designed with automatic air conditioning. The wind blew right through it. It was a prefab with vertical boards, tongue and groove, and they must have used green wood, and it shrinks. So the air just blew through it, and we spent the first winter in there shivering and spending inordinate amount of money trying to keep the place warm. So I says, I think we'll find some other energy source. Maybe we can use the wind to heat the house. But when I did the calculations, I said, first of all, we shouldn't even try to heat this house. We should clad it with something else and close it off, or we should redesign the house. So I started with a blank page on how to design a house which would suit my ideals. And I'd been when I was on that trip in England, I had been to my cousin took me to a cave in the north of England that had been carved by a monk in the Middle Ages, and it was a beautiful arch thing. You could touch the walls with both hands like this, but the feeling of tranquility and this is the shape we need to live in. We should not be living in these boxes, they're like this. I think we need a freer shape. And so I was thinking of building a dome outside. Then when I had this experience with this cloth, I thought, why not put it underground? And then also I was and the place and so I could feel and so combine the igloo cave with the underground. Yes. Now that was a bit of a trick because the building codes and inspectors have these book of codes, and this is so out in left field compared to what they're used to. They want to see that the studs are this far apart and your electrical outlets are this far apart, and the codes are all designed for rectangular, conventional yuck architecture. You probably well know.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And so fortunately I was well politically connected in this township, and I said, I want to be this free-form house, and here are the drawings. And they said, well, we can't approve that unless you have an engineer's stamp on it, and if there's an engineer's stamp on it, then fine. So it took a long time to find an engineer. That was because most engineers, again, have programs that are designed for rectangular architecture, and so when you have all of these compound curves and shapes, and then it's going to have the pressures of earth, etc., that takes a more skilled engineer who can think out of the box. And so I found Peter Sheffield, and Peter Sheffield at that time, 1990 or 1989 when I applied. He had the most up-to-date computer, but it still took 3 days to crunch the numbers and all of these things, and essentially said you need to put an extra bar in here and there, but it's going to be fine. And I says, well, I think that's I know that because it's all under compression. It's like the egg, and I'm designing always for compression in the arch, etc. But essentially the computer approved it, Peter approved it, the township approved it, and away we went. And the building inspector visited once while we were under construction, and he looked at it and he says, "What do I know?" and left. My best assistant on it was my longtime assistant, Richard Van Hoevelen, who came to work for me when he was 17 in 1976 or 77, and a very talented guy, but again, not trained in any particular discipline other than he thinks three-dimensionally. And so he had a lot of input on this. He'd built a conventional house of his own, so he knew a little. He knew about electrical wiring and various things like that. But then I have a friend who's a master builder and a stonemason and a woodworker, and he would give me a lot of pointers on construction techniques. I learned a CAD program on the computer. I drew it all. All of those details are drawn in the computer. Well, the furniture is mostly from Curved Space, which is a friend of mine, Wolf Mueller, designed. I'd known him for a long time beforehand, and so because it fits, Curved Space fits the room, and the kitchen was the biggest challenge, because it's how do you fit most rectangular things in a round room. So we did a lot of different adaptations, and the biggest one was redesigning the refrigerator, and so refrigerators needed redesign anyway. Yes. So I designed this new refrigerator, and it works quite well in here. And I designed the kitchen so it can be very practical. You know, the refrigerator is here; it comes up out of the counter. Everything is accessible. You have the sink so you can wash the material. You have the work area, a place for the garbage or the recyclables right there. The stove is next, so you go ding, 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 and you can stand in one place and move the food through to, and then you can feed it. You can serve it over the top to the people that are sitting waiting for you to feed them. Well, we have a patent that is in the pending state at the moment, applied on an international patent, and I've done a lot more development work on the refrigerator since that time. So it is the ultimate refrigerator, and theoretically it can be more than 50% more efficient than in terms of energy, and far more efficient in terms of getting at your material. So it has great potential, but the big problem again is all the major manufacturers, and it's a huge market for refrigerators worldwide. In North America alone, there's 10 million fridges sold a year. So if you go worldwide, it's probably 8 times that, and so there is a huge market for it, and so I haven't yet convinced a major manufacturer that this is the way to go, because most of them have this not invented here attitude. It didn't come from their own design group. So I've learned a vast amount about trying to sell a new design to an established what do you call it, industry. The established industry don't want to change.
I see.
The established industry, they are making boxes. The production line is set up for boxes. The designers are set up to design new handles or new shelves. But they don't want anything that changes the whole thing, so that they have to change they go, oh no, and then the marketing department says, we've been selling square fridges, why do we want to go and try and sell round fridges? There's been no structural problems at all, absolutely none. We always were concerned, is it going to fall in on us? No problem with the plumbing. I've had a couple of electrical problems, but it's all conduit, so you can run it out and run new.
It's all septic?
Yes, it's a septic system.
And well?
And a well.
Okay.
Yes. It's conventional septic, conventional well. The only problem I have is finding the right kind of heating source, because I started out with a ground source heat pump, and it was just constant maintenance problem, always breaking down, losing pressure, doing things like that. I switched to a outdoor wood and oil furnace, and it was, I probably bought the wrong one, and then I bought another one, I think, which is another wrong one. So I've gone through a number of what do you call it, difficulties finding the right, but it doesn't really relate to the house. It relates to the technology of heating. I want to keep the major heating mechanics outside. I don't like the noise. This is radiant floor heat, and of course, when I started this, there wasn't the proper tube designed for in-floor heating, so I used welding hose. And I actually spoke with a guy today, and he says, you know, the lime in the concrete is going to eat the rubber on the on the welding hose. Well, it's been in 15 years, and there has not yet been a problem. But perhaps eventually there will be. Well, you know, when you're a starving artist, you have to get your name out there. So some friends of mine, first of all, I was living in this gas station restaurant in Greenwood that had a little apartment in the back, and I didn't have any money. So I said to the owner, I'll take your scrap pile, I'll make it, and his restaurant was called The Paddock, to do with horse racing. And I says, I'll build a horse out of your scrap pile, and you give me the place to live, and I'll free rent, you mean? Yeah, for free rent, and you get to keep, but I still own half of the horse. So he says, a deal. Yeah, he says, okay, it was horse dealing, you know. So he said, okay, that's a deal. Jerry Fisher. And so and Jerry Fisher also sold farm equipment. Anyway, I'll add to that story in a moment. So one day my friend said, you know, there was this show coming, a big sculpture show. No, they had a big sculpture show at the City Hall. Not the annual show, but a special sculpture show at Nathansville Square with sculptors from all over the world. And of course, I wasn't invited, so I didn't participate in there. But there was sculptures. It was a juried show by the art police that organized it, and so it got so little publicity. There was a little article in the back page of the paper, and there was no. I thought, well, these guys don't know what they're doing. So about a month later, this is during Expo 67. This was 1967. I said, let's take that horse and put it right in front of City Hall in the middle of the night. It's kind of like the Trojan horse. So I designed a special trailer that the horse would go on. You see, and there was two little things that you did, and you could take it off that trailer very easily, so it could go in the back of a little car and be towed down there, right out into Nathansville Square, and then you go like this, and it sat there, and it weighed about 2 tons, you see, and so clunk, it was there, and then there was no wheels to move it. So it was like taking the Trojan horse and putting it inside of Troy. You know, I saw this whole thing, and of course the next day, and what I wanted was to get the publicity. So yeah, I went home. I didn't even go down there. I didn't want. I needed cover. So the deal was, we would say that my friends did it as a trick on me. You know, so anyway, I went home and. And the next day, there's front page of all the Toronto papers and national news. This horse shows up in City Hall, right? And so it really worked. And then I went down there when I saw it in the papers, and I said, well, I saw it in the paper, and I forgot. We knew it was missing in the morning. We didn't know where it went, and so I was grilled by all of the security and all of that, and they were all upset, you know. But everybody was laughing, you know. They all thought it was a very good joke. Yeah, I've seen the pictures of her. Yeah, she does them out of yes. I've seen her work. Wonderful thing. Yeah. Well, I like pop art. And doing those large scale things. Yeah, he did the baseball bat, didn't he? I think that was great stuff. I enjoy landscape art, and Christo really does. His things do connect you to the planet in the matter of their scale and our human relation. I really enjoy Christo's work. Oh yeah, only in photographs. I've never seen them in reality. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think he's a good salesman. Well, I think that I call that bureaucratic art.
Why?
Well, because it's innocuous. I think that bureaucracies like that kind of work because nobody can say it's good or bad. You see, I think
engineering.
Maybe he should have been an architect and done them that way. But I'm not a fan. It's minimalist, but it's so simple that why state it?
I see. Yeah. But it has its own style.
It has its own style, and I would have loved to have heard one of his presentations because he sold those boxes to how many different places?
Yes.
They're all over the place, and so he's obviously I'd be interested in the words he used to be able to convince the powers that had the dollars to buy those to do that, because I think there can be one of those or two of those is all right in the odd place, but I saw too much of it in Toronto.
Yeah. Yes.
Ron Baird.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's a very good personal friend.
Yeah. Oh.
And I love his work. Ron is a great sculptor. There was two things. One is I watched Step Down on the Moon on television live, and I thought, wow, that was fantastic. Then my sister, one Christmas, I think Christmas of 1969, gave me a model of the lunar lander.
Like a scale model.
A scale model, just a kid's model that you put together, glued together with plastic. And I looked at it and this is like the Santa Maria, or it's like it's the first spaceship man landed on another planet with. This is an icon. And I said, I'm going to build a full-size one and put it in the art. I just got inspired to do that. And I also thought, wow, it's also such an interesting shape for this kind of a mechanical spider-like thing, It has no there's no design to make it look good. It's just designed to be absolutely functional. It doesn't have to fly through the atmosphere, so it doesn't have to be streamlined. So it's a bunch of shapes put together to suit the need. And I thought that was kind of like a crystal growing, And so I thought it would be. I liked the shape of it, and I thought also at the same time we were living near Brome. And we had a one-room schoolhouse, and I was wanted to put an addition on the schoolhouse, or build a studio or an office or something, and the township was giving me a very hard time about a permit. So I thought, I'll just build that, and that can be my office too. So that's what I did.
But how about the fund?
Well, I thought this won't be permanent, and eventually I could sell it to a museum. I made a business error there because I didn't realize museums don't buy things, but they get them donated. So there's some I thought in the end I would be able to sell it to a museum. As it worked out, it did. That's exactly what happened, but it took 12 years. Well, it really started with my parents, because I was raised on a farm, and my mother was a biologist and really loved natural things. She
in Ontario here.
Ontario, in Pickering. The farm had been in the family through my mother's side for 5 generations. And it was a lovely farm with a beautiful stream through it, and we had cows and chickens and pigs and geese and ducks and various domestic animals, but we also had a pond, which attracted wildlife, etc. And my mother had been lecturing at the University of Toronto. She had a master's degree in biology, one of the very first women to get a degree in biology at U of T. And when she started raising a family, she passed on her passion for biology and her knowledge of biology to her kids. So we were always learning about things, and also learning to appreciate them and the wonders of them. We didn't, when we have chicken for Sunday dinner, we didn't eviscerate it, we dissected it, you know, so we knew what all, and so we learned a vast amount through my mother and my father. My father was more intrigued with animal behavior and did a number of research projects on how farm animals react to various things, and and we always discussed these things in family. So I was raised with this reverence for nature and understanding of biology and of course, but at the same time, it was just after World War II. And even during World War II, one of my father's cousins had come from England as a pilot to train Canadian pilots, and his family lived with us. So we talked about aviation and fighter planes and all of that too. There was a lot of early imprinting about that. And then after the war, many pilots came to live in the Ajax area because it was turned into a university. And so I got more stories of flying, and so I wanted to. I really got enthralled about flying, and of course at the same time, Canada geese are very rare. And in the fall you'd see maybe one or two V's go by, and those are rare days and wonderful occasions. And so I had this very powerful desire to fly like a bird. You know, I think it's common amongst humans. I just gave a lecture on it this morning. We've always lived enviously of the birds from the day man could perceive birds. So here was, and then there was two fortuitous things happened to me. I was born dyslexic and colorblind, and so I couldn't get a pilot's license. So I was barred from flying conventionally in the 50s, and so I had to take up hang gliding. And hang gliding segued into the very first ultralights, which I lived through, and then I realized the first time in history we had aircraft flew at bird speed. No permit for hang gliding or early ultralights. There was no permitting needed. You just needed to run off the hill. Have enough nerve to run off the hill. No, they require a license and permit now to fly ultralights now. But actually, I got grandfathered into it. They gave me a license because yes. Yes, in the 70s, I started flying hang gliders, and then that evolved into ultralights, because when you live on flat land, hang gliding is very difficult, although they've overcome it now by being able to tow you up. But then you had to find a hill to run off, and there aren't enough high hills here in Ontario to do that. There aren't any high enough hills. So putting an engine on was the way to get up in the air, and then you could shut it off and glide. So that was that was what got me flying. And then of course, they take off backwards, so you got to get them from the back. As I say, then these aircraft would fly at bird speed the first time. All other aircraft since the Wright brothers had got too fast. There's very few conventional airplanes that'll fly safely under 60 miles an hour. Well, we can fly too, yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but the key to flying with birds is being able to fly slowly, and still be maneuverable, and etc. And so that first aircraft that I built from a hang glider, converted from a hang glider, flew perfectly at bird speed. And so I was able to learn how to do that.
So you built it yourself?
Yeah.
Or you? Okay.
Yeah, me and my assistant, Richard.
Yeah. Okay.
He's played a very key role in all of the things.
I see.
So just, you know, so that whole thing evolved, and by learning to fly with birds, I learned then that we could lead them anywhere. And then we got involved with because the whooping crane was the highest endangered bird in North America, and there was a requirement to establish a new flock of migratory whooping cranes for them to survive. And so the organization that I co-founded with my partner, who started to fly with me in the 90s, has essentially been the backbone to that project, and we now have 60 whooping cranes migrating on a new migration route, and we'll probably get that up to about 120 in the next 2 or 3 years. So that project has become a great success, and it all grew out of my learning to fly a hang glider and doing this experiment with geese and then the whooping crane. Well, you only fly on the perfect days, and then you only fly 1 to 2 hours because we don't actually duplicate the way the birds migrate. Our interests are to safely get them to their destination. So it takes a long time. In subsequent years, when they do it on their own, they do it in a quarter of the time or less. But most of the birds that fly with us fly by surfing on the wake created by the airplane. So they learn the direction, and they go under and we're like towing them almost, because we create, it's like a boat wake, you know, when and so it's like wake surfing.
I see.
And
fascinating.
Yeah, well, the original ones I filmed now. My partner does that. Yeah, it's all filmed. Or we trade around. I don't fly anymore, actually. I mean, I don't do the migration anymore. But we have 4 pilots that do that now. Yeah. Well, we find the best is just a good handheld camera, and you can track them, you know.
Fascinating.
Well, because we did the first migration with geese in '93, and we got a call from ABC. They heard that we were doing this. ABC's 2020 wanted to do a show on it, and they did. So they covered that first migration, and they showed it on American Thanksgiving in 1993, the fall of '93, and they said between 20 and 30 million people watched it. And so it had such positive response. All of the major studios called wanting the rights to make the movie. So I got an agent, Bruce Westwood from Toronto, and he organized making a deal with Columbia Pictures, and we negotiated a contract, and they bought the rights to my life story, essentially, and then hired
Jeff Daniels?
Well, Jeff Daniels was the actor, but the director, Carol Ballard.
Yes.
And they gave me the right of refusal on 3 directors. I could basically choose the director so that we'd have a good film. And I'd known of Carol Ballard's work, and so he was perfect. Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, it's a good movie. I mean, a lot of it is fictional.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But
supposed to be on the book. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a good movie. Well, there's been a lot of we're actually working with the Russians on a project to do a similar thing from Siberia to Iran, actually. But that's not as easy as it is here.
Of course, yeah.
And I think that's the major need is for the Siberian crane, which is the equivalent of our whooping crane, only in Asia. So there is some possibility there, but there's no other real application for it. Yeah, well, I was invited to do a proposal. They needed a vertical sculpture for the land transportation. That has to do with land transportation. And the day I arrived in Vancouver, Steve Fogno had completed his run across Canada on one leg. He'd been the guy that followed Terry Fox. And I thought, geez, if a guy can run across Canada on one leg, we have to do something to celebrate our legs, because they are probably our best land transportation.
Yes.
So that became so the proposal was a spiral up into the sky, evolving from the wheel back to the people running into the legs, sort of moving into a higher spiritual plane by using your legs, and so it was called Transcending the Traffic. It was like a traffic jam at the bottom, and then these figures that all spiraled up into the sky, and it was a celebration of legs of our land transportation. It was right next to it. Actually, when I talked to the designers, the ideal thing would be if that highway had terminated into my sculpture, and that was the end piece of it. It would have been the perfect segue. As it is, it was next to it, but it didn't, and it did a similar thing. But it could have been really perfect if the highway had become the Transcending the Traffic. Yeah. I drew it up originally, and then passed the drawing to the engineers, and the engineers. Okay. You know, I suppose it's the same as designing a building. You have a concept, and then you have to make sure that it's not going to fall down.
Is there any famous artist or architect that influence you most in your work?
Well, Antonio Gaudí and Rodin, and there's a lot of. I'm hard put for names at the moment, but I mean the classic Leonardo da Vinci and
of course Leonardo must be a major inspiration for the flying.
Sure, Leonardo da Vinci is and Michelangelo and the great sculptors, Myron, the Greek sculptor. You know, I really liked a lot of sculptors. Well. There isn't one. In the beginning, we sponsored it through my wife's and my business, or her business, essentially. That was the initial money that started it, and then when we sold the rights to Fly Away Home, we used that money for the next project to progress through the next stage, and that next stage was to create a non-profit organization with a fundraising ability, and that's what we do now. We raise funds from various charities through various, the normal charitable avenues, and we have to raise about a little over $500,000 US a year for that project, and so there are a number of donors and from people that send in $100 to foundations that will give $25,000 or $30,000. We have had some from the U.S. government. We've had nothing from Canadian government.
Isn't that sad?
It is sad. Canadian, we've had no real help at all from. We're branching out into that to some degree. We may be working with sea turtles, doing surveys by air and etc. But mostly birds. Well, the government organizations, government bureaucracies feel they own nature. And if you're outside of that bureaucracy and you start doing something in research, they don't like it. That's their bailiwick. They want to own it.
Okay, what frustrates you most as an artist or as a sculptor
Well, it's all. It is all of the bureaucratic stuff that you have to put up with, and in anything, it's always having to deal with permitting and or some kind of. But that's I find very frustrating. The filmmaker.
Oh.
No, I've been the sculptor.
I see. Are you still doing the sculpture?
Yeah. Well, I do the models for, and Richard does the large pieces. I'm all over the map, but it's mostly commissioned pieces now, and there is a surrealism to them all, though.
I see.
Well, that was kind of my wife was just taking up knitting, and she needed a rocking chair, so she asked me if I could make her a rocking chair. I was going to make one in wood, and I went to my shop, and I says, well, where do you put the seat? Where do you put the back? What is the geometry of a rocking chair? So it says, well, if I put one together in steel first, I can weld it quickly. I can quickly figure it out whether. And so I started playing in the shop, kind of sketching with rod, and I came up with this shape. Well, the arm and the leg and the back, like the comma. So I made a quick one out of rod, and I welded it, and I thought, wow, this looks great. I'm just gonna. So I developed that further. That's how it came.
Okay. What's the
quite frustrating one? The most frustrating one was we were going to build a new facility, factory, sort of, for my wife, and it was going to be environmentally right, with dome shapes, again, like this house, and we picked an old gravel pit that we were going to recycle and renaturalize, and the fight we had to try and get that through cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and went nowhere, and that was very frustrating.
I see.
And then I've had a lot of frustration with the organization of Operation Migration, and petty jealousies within of people thinking that they need to be more recognized than others, and that kind of political BS that becomes very wearing and frustrating. Do it much differently. This has worked so well. I think you see, I had 17 years to think about this before I built it. And even though when we started building it, there was a bunch of things I hadn't thought of. But I would build it. I would do some technical things different in the construction technique, and I would also. I would be able to do it a lot more economically the second time around, I think, and I would use a different insulation method. And there's a few things I would change.
Very sure.
No, there's very few people that have tried. There's a lot of people who want to do this, but when they realize that they have to do so much themselves because there's nobody you can hire to do this, that they give up.
How about any other colleagues that try to do the migration concept with flying geese?
Yeah, there's been a couple of other people. There's another guy in Europe that's doing it, and one fellow out in Idaho was trying it, but both of them have quit. Yeah. Well, I was a fan of Paolo Solari, but the last time I visited there, I was a little disappointed in that Arcosanti wasn't further along. It seemed to have run aground. But I love the shapes and the idea, the location, and wonderful. But I think then he got involved with making bells, which is it was a good start, but it didn't not enough follow through. I haven't seen that.
The habitat,
Oh yes.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I've only seen pictures of it and I've read about it, I've never been there. But to me, for urban living, they look good. It's better than
a flat slab.
Yeah. I liked it.
Okay, Bilbao Museum by Frank Gehry.
I haven't been there either. Some friends of mine, actually Ron Baird, just came back from there. Anything that gets us thinking out of the rectangle is good. And of course the use of materials there, where he's used titanium that was really recycled from Russia, I think interesting to use that material. I hear there are a number of problems with it, but even so, the image of it is quite good. You need breakaway things like that.
Yeah. All the way.
Yeah, well, I've walked by it a couple of times. Again, that's nice to it's breaking the box. I claim to be an escapee. I did the foundation year there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So how do you like the new tabletop?
Well, I guess that's it's kind of crazy, but again, I think it's good to do things like that.
But
in fact, when I was in high school, they give you this test for and always architect would come up. You see, it has to give you a strong emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
That's really first is important. Oh, I like the shape. That shape wow, I like that shape.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's so subjective. I've lived my life being told that you need to specialize, and every time and pick one and do one thing well is always, everybody was raised in the 50s, 60s, and I rejected that, and I said, no, advance on all fronts at once. So I've become a generalist, and as I say, I'm like the jack of all trades, but master of none, but a master jack.
Well, work like a sculptor or art piece or.
No, the only person I really collaborated with, other than my son Jordy, who's also a sculptor, is my longtime sculptor assistant, Richard. And I'm discrediting him by calling him the assistant now. He's surpassed me in his abilities to do things in 3 dimensions, and so he's the only one I really collaborate with.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it was at first glance, but as we got to know each other more, yeah. Well, my daughter has become a biologist and just graduated, and I've just taught her to fly.
Great.
And we did our first solo about 2 weeks ago, and last week we did the first. I guess for Thursday we did the first cross-country solo. I flew one plane, she flew the other, and she's also teaching me a lot of things about biology that were missing in my learning. She was very good, so I have a great relationship with her. My son Jordy is a sculptor also, and we are very similar. We have a lot of to and froing. He's a really talented guy. He does great work, and I really support him in that. And my older son, who you met, is managing the Paula's fur business.
Yes.
And so I'm really proud of all of them. I wouldn't